Well, good Friday morning. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Marlon Bowling, your tour guide to the ag commodities. So glad you could join us today. And today is a little unusual. It's one of those weird holiday weeks where we actually got our weekly export sales data out this morning. Here to talk about it, I'll welcome aboard Brian Hoops, the president of Midwest Market Solutions. And together we'll go through these new numbers here and get Brian's thought on this. So Brian, let's walk through these numbers here and see what we had. On the corn this week or last week, we actually sold 367,300 tons. Man, that was way off of the pace of over 1 million that we have been used to having. And I believe that was a marketing year low. Soybeans, 202,200 tons. That was also well off of where we should be by now. Soy meal, 81,400 tons. You had the wheat at 135,900 tons. Let's flip the page and see what we had for grain sorghum and cotton and rice, shall we? On grain sorghum sales, last week, if you recall, they were a negative number, I believe. Grain sorghum this week, 18,700 tons. Meanwhile, on upland cotton, they fell off the pace too. 131,100 running bales, and the rice, 31,200 tons. Your immediate knee-jerk reaction to those numbers, Brian?
Hey, good morning, Marlon. So, caveat on these export sales. This is the week ending December 28th, meaning it's our Christmas week. So, this is one of the slowest weeks of the marketing season. We knew it was going to be bad. They were bad. As you mentioned, corn, a marketing year low. It's only 14.5 million bushels. Soybeans also a marketing year low, only 7.4 million. And wheat was pretty dismal as well, 4.9 million bushels. It's not a marketing year low, but these numbers are pretty pale in comparison to what we've seen on normal weeks. But again, it's a holiday shortened week, so we expected they wouldn't be all that great. There wasn't any private export sale announcements this morning either. We've gone a stretch since December the 19th. That's when our last private export sale announcement was. So that's been quite a while. There isn't really anything to brag about as far as our export business goes. And the fact that we've seen a slowdown in our exports, a slowdown in our private sales, I think gives us an indication going forward here that the trade is kind of turning its attention to South American supplies. China is starting to look at yield potential out of Argentina and Brazil. And while we did have a drought stretch in northern Brazil, there's been a lot of rains in that area. And now we're more focused on beneficial crop, moisture, and bigger yields that'll give us opportunities to see other countries step in. China buy from Argentina and buy from Brazil, and really largely ignore the U.S. And that's why we've seen soybeans push to this new low level coming back after the new year.
Okay, so let's take a look at our prices overnight with our quotes from bar chart. And now the market did trade for about 15 minutes after these weekly export sales numbers came out. So it did have a chance to react to it. And we finished up that Globex trade with the March corn down 1 1.25 at 465 1/4. And that was a penny from its low of the overnight range. We had December new crop corn down 2 at 496 3/4. That was just one tick off of its overnight low and getting a little further away from that $5 benchmark there on that new crop contract. Meanwhile, in soybeans, well, we had the March going down 7.5 cents this morning at $12.60 per bushel. Again, these markets closed after the export sales numbers came out. November new crop soybeans, well, as we take a look at that, it was down 6.5 cents when we finished up that overnight trade, and it actually finished at $12.14 1/4. Now, on the wheat complex in Chicago, March finished unchanged at 613 1/2. In the Kansas City market, you had the March contract finishing 2 cents higher at 627 3/4. Meanwhile, in the spring wheat, here you had the March contract 3 3/4 higher at 715. So what, did they overdo it yesterday or what?
Yeah, they might have a little bit. We may give back some of this gains in the wheat market too, with the dollar being higher this morning after the non-farm payroll numbers were released. So dollars higher off of that news. But there was some talk yesterday about possible winter kill in parts of Russia that could hurt their crop. I think that's why we saw Chicago wheat gaining yesterday, a pretty strong move, despite the fact that we're going to have decent moisture maybe this weekend and better chances next week of moisture in the form of snow across the winter wheat plains areas here in the United States.
Okay, well, with that in mind, we'll come back in a moment. We had beef and pork export sales numbers as well. We'll analyze those and take a look at what the market holds for them when we come back. All right, now we're back with you, and we're talking with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. We're analyzing the weekly export sales data that came out from USDA this morning, and on the grain side, it was really pathetic, actually. What about on the meat side? Did we have much in the way of good numbers there? Let's take a look. On the beef, 16,600 tons were sold last week. And again, I combine the current and next marketing years. However, in this case, now that we're into 2024, we still had some leftover sales of 2023. So on the beef, that amounted to 9,500 tons. The new crop, or now current marketing year of 2024, we had sales of 7,100 tons. I do see where China was in there buying 3,200 tons of beef for the 2023 period. Then you roll over to the pork, and we had 27,700 tons. Of that, we had 17,800 tons that were sold for 2023. Remember, these numbers were from, let's see, this would be as of December 28th, I guess. So we had 17,800 tons for that period. Mexico was one of the key buyers there. They bought 2,700 tons, but they were overshadowed by South Korea. They picked up 11,900 tons for 2023. Then, as you look into the segment for next year, 9,900 tons were sold for 2024. I guess now I have to get used to calling it the current year. And there, Mexico bought 3,100 tons, and China picked up only 200 tons. So they were actually more active in buying U.S. beef last week. But what do you think of those numbers overall?
Yeah, overall, Marlon, it's kind of back in the range of where we have been. So nothing great for beef. The pork numbers were okay. And considering it's a holiday shortened week, once again, like the grains were, those are pretty decent numbers, actually. So not bad. Nothing that's going to really inspire the trade. We're going to have expanded limits in the hogs because we closed limit up yesterday in the front month contract. Cattle futures, I'm concerned about the cattle fundamentals, very concerned. We're hearing packers are going to start cutting cattle kills on Saturdays, trying in an effort to get their margins back in line, as the box's beef values just will not stabilize and try and move higher. Their margins are now about a negative $150 a head. We were down yesterday, but it looks like the cash trade might be a little firmer here this week, $1 to $2 better on a dress basis so far this week. And we've seen bids at steady money in the South, but no confirmed trade at that level or higher. So it looks like the cash could be firmer this week, but everything else kind of points to negative price direction here for the cattle market. You have steer weights yesterday up 14 pounds from the previous week, or 2 pounds from the previous week, 14 from the prior year, which is a new all-time record. So you have a lot of cattle coming at us, and they're all heavier. And it's kind of the same thing in the hog market, where you've got a lot of hogs in the next several months, and they're at much heavier weights as well.
Well, the lean hogs did close up 375 on the nearby February yesterday. The question is, was it a dead cat bounce, or can they actually build on that now? Did they put a low in? They led the charge on the nearby month. The cattle were down about 70 cents. Feeders yesterday were down about $1.40 on the nearby. So we'll see how they want to react to these export numbers, if at all. Thank you, Brian, for helping us out here this morning. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions in Springfield, Missouri. Have a good weekend.